At one time, the bass was, come on now, this was bass capital.
Yeah.
I mean, New York had New York,
you
Philly
know,
had their guys, but...
Detroit has a regional sound.
Right.
And people imitate it.
Right.
All across the board. I mean, there's a
Often
reason why we
imitated but
got
never
700
duplicated.
members
Right.
in a city that's got 500,000.
The average talent here, the average talent, the people that's not even heard of or seen, that's just in the alley or standing on the corner,
Right.
play and make the hair stand up off your neck.
That's true.
I hear talent all around, but it's
people
not
shout,
like
"Here
Detroit.
There was a lot of Motown, seriously, a lot of Motown from my mother mostly.
Some of that Detroit stuff.
Oh yeah, you can't get away from that, man. You cannot get away from Jamerson, Babbitt, Tony Newton, none of those cats, man. And you know, you're from Detroit, and Darren's from Detroit. You
right.
cannot deny the historical impact that Detroit has had on the world.
I started playing rock first. I didn't start listening to Motown or any of that until probably like 77. In between that time, it was Led Zeppelin. Then I got turned on to this group called Rush.
Well, officially, I started playing when I was basically started 14, 15. I started late. I was playing drums at first, but the reason why I started playing, my oldest sister had gotten married to one of the Dramatics, like Mays, and at the present time, they were cutting at the studio called United Sound that was here in Detroit.
I started at 12 years old. Yeah.
And why? Why you pick the bass of all this?
Well, I wanted to play drums, and my parents wouldn't buy a drum set, so my oldest brother had an acoustic guitar, so he said, why don't you play bass? So I started playing bass, not knowing really what to do with it, but that was the beginning, you know.
Probably in 11th or 12th grade of high school before I really started playing bass. I played guitar since I was in 3rd grade and thought I was going to be a guitar player until I heard Ron Carter do something and I said, I'm going to have to play that instrument.
15. You started when you were 15 years old. You want to tell us when that was?
Oh yeah, early 60s.
Early 60s you started playing?
I'm sorry, early 70s, man. I'm making myself old. Born in 55, brother.
So you started playing 15 years old. And why? Why did you pick up the bass guitar?
Willie Weeks.
Willie Weeks with the
Donny Hathaway.
I started playing bass about 21 years ago, and the reason why I started playing the bass because my bass player kept coming up missing.
Because at 68, I heard Larry Graham say, I'm going to add some bottom so that the dancer just can't hide. And I said, God, I got it.
I was just drawing to bass, you know. I've been hearing music, and somehow, you know, when you grow up and you hear music, you just draw close to an instrument. Bass was it for me.
It happened a bunch of years. At the time, in Dayton, Ohio, this had to be 71, 72 or something. You know, Ohio players had just gotten on the map, and and my brother was friends with all of them. So in our neighborhood, we decided to start a band, and all of us for Christmas said we're gonna get different instruments. One of my boys got drums, the other one got a guitar, I got a bass, and so we just tried to start off a little local band. But at the time, though, like I said, Dayton was really getting on the map with all the rest of our homeboys, Ohio players, Lakeside, Heatwave, Roger Troutman, Ohio players. We all kind of grew up together. Same neighborhood, pretty much.
Well, I was 13, so that would be the 70s. I'm so old now, I can't even figure out what part of the 70s. But
I think I was like about 18. I was playing for a church called Pilgrim Grounds Church, but I wasn't playing bass then. I was playing drums.
I was strictly on drums. Drums got stolen out of church.
Oh man.
At that age, I couldn't buy no more. They wasn't gonna try to buy me none, you know. I was too young to get a lawyer. I ain't had no money. So I ended up like about 2 months later picking up a bass.
I started playing in 1969, bro.
Wow.
On the Mumford. Well, I was just getting ready to, you know, start in Mumford, and I went to a talent show. Well, they say the talent show was 69-70 because that's the way it was listed. And then the band was Willie Wooten was on keyboard. You had Gene Dunlap on drums. Earl Clue was on guitar. My one and only Reggie McBride was on bass. And you know, in my house, my stepfather is a famous bass player. Will Austin is his name. And I've been in our basement, man. We used to sit on the steps and watch Gloria Lynn, Sonny Stitt, Esther Phillips, you know, Earl Clue later on. They kind of helped him get his break by letting him sit in at Baker's all the time. And I mean, just all of the big people, Marcus Belgraves, you know, all of those guys raised me like, you know, Harold McKinney, like, you know, they was all my uncles, you know. So the thing is, I liked bass, but bass didn't mean nothing to me until I went to school and heard somebody like maybe a little older than me, just a little older, playing something, you know, and he was playing If I Was Your Woman and Don't Play That Song For Me. And I mean, I was like, man, I got to play bass. So my real father was in Vietnam at the time, and he used to call like every Saturday and ask me, you know, if I wanted something, and then he would make my stepmother go out and get it for me, you know. And I wanted a bass, and I know he was thinking like, damn, he playing bass because of his stepfather. But that wasn't it, man. It was strictly that talent show that did it for me.
Around 1977, I'd seen John Entwistle play live with The Who, and was just totally blown away. Didn't know what he was doing or who he was, but I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Well, it goes back when we were in like 5th grade, and we started playing wind instruments, and she played the flute, and I played the clarinet. And then a year later, I wanted something cooler, so I switched to bass clarinet, and I loved it. And I really grew to love the low end, and I started to love, you know, grooving and like supporting the higher instruments and stuff. So when we decided to play guitar, I could choose either guitar or bass. But Tanya was totally going with guitar. She played flute, and she was like, I want to play guitar. And I was like, well, maybe I should play bass. And so I picked up the bass, and I fell in love. And so that is why.
About 66, 67.
66, 67, whoa. And why the bass guitar?
Because we had a bass player in this band. I was a saxophone player, and he couldn't play Cold Sweat. So I thought somebody could play it. So I bought a Crestwood for $25 from Ronald Down. Well, anyway, so I decided to play bass, and about a year later, I got with Edwin Starr.
I was 16. Tail end of junior high into high school, the big thing for me and my buddies was skateboarding. Everything was skateboarding. And I had a buddy that broke his ankle at the beginning of the summer, which is like the worst thing that could possibly happen to someone that skates. So to pass the time, his dad bought him a guitar. My dad's actually a bass player, but I, for whatever reason, just didn't really take to the interest of playing. You know, I was like watching perform, I like going to shows and seeing, you know, the crowd's reaction. I wanted to be up there so bad, but I just never really considered playing. Until my buddy that broke his ankle said, hey, your dad's a bass player, why don't you go grab his bass and grab his amp? So here's me, you know, 90 pounds, and I've got, you know, my dad's homemade 15-inch cabinet, you know, weighs as much as I do, and his Fender Jazz Special. And didn't know how to hold it or anything. Took it over to my buddy's house. And so, you know, put it in my lap and, you know, took my hand, here, hit this note, and he hit the same note. I'm like, wow, we're playing music. And from that moment on, skateboards went in the closet, and it was on from there.
I started off on bass guitar when I was about 15, because about 14 I decided I wanted to be a rock star, and about 15 is when I realized I couldn't sing good enough to pull it off, so I better learn how to play something, on the recommendation from my brother, who's a drummer as well. And so I thought, my brother told me, man, you should play bass. Bass is easy. You know, you could sing and play bass and be in a band. It'll be cool. And I immediately started learning how to play stuff by Rush.
And at the age of 12, why inspiration?
What was the inspiration to either have a bass call you or you pick it up?
Well, I had a natural love for music. My father used to sing. It was just inbred in me, and just the love of music. I love to listen to some old school James Brown, Marvin Gaye, all that good stuff. But I also had a cousin. I have a cousin. Ralph. A brother by the name of Ralph Humes. And this brother was a cold. Let me rephrase that. He is a cold bass player. I used to just love to sit back and watch him play. And I would go to his house and visit with him. And he would just throw on an album, some cameos, some Isley Brothers, some Al Jarreau, some Lonnie Liston Smith, and just play right along with it and hit every note. And then he'd add his own little stuff in there. And I'd sit there in amazement watching him play this stuff. And then when he had to go to work, I would sneak into his bass case and pull that thing out and see if I could do it. Quite naturally, I couldn't. But I kept working at it until I finally learned to play a few notes and just developed a love for it and kept on going.
You know what? I started playing guitar, probably just like every other 13-year-old boy, you know. You get a guitar, you think it's cool, and you never touch it again. Kind of one of those things. And then I was hanging out with a friend of mine, and he wanted to start a band. Needed a bass player, so I was like, I can play bass, you know.
48 years. I started when I was 13, and I'll be 60 this year. But I didn't get serious until I was about 20.
So you started playing it, and what year was it?
1965.
You started playing bass in 1965, and you was how old? 13. At 13, why did you decide bass at 13? What was your influence?
Well, I primarily grew up in two different neighborhoods. One was all black, and by the time I was 9 years old, we moved into what was a predominantly all white neighborhood. Now, in the all black neighborhood, there were some guys in the neighborhood that often played outside. A guy that played blues, his name was Aaron Neal. These two boys that were twins, Daryl and Harold Hogan, and they played outside. And this was right about the time when Herbie Mann had come out with Live at the Lighthouse, and everybody was playing Summertime, and that was before I started playing, but that's what struck me. I said, I want to do that.
Okay, well, first of all, let me spit this at you. See, I even sat up under the one they call Big G while the funk was instilled in me. See, I'm not new to the funk. I'm true to the funk. I'm glued to the funk. That's why you're going to be bumping when I'm funking. See, I'm down with the P, and the P is down with me. I'm protected, can't you see? That's why I'm macking with most lacking, funky tracking, paper stacking. Double, triple tracking and stacking, digital funkin', analog macking. See, I go way back. I've been funkin' since the day when the beats was macking and there wasn't no lacking. See?
Well, I started when I was 5. It was because of this bass player at our church. I used to make fun of him because it looked funny how he would go.
What's his name?
Brother Henry Robinson.
Okay.
So I would make fun of him, like when he would thump and stuff. So I tapped my dad on the shoulder. I was like, I want to play bass. He was like, what you gonna do with a bass? I was like, I don't play it. Everything else,
And as you call it, the rest is history. 5 years old?
Yep.
5 years old, Pops? Could he play? Was it too big for him? What happened?
No, I bought him a standard size bass at 5 years old, so he used to slide it down to hit the note and he would push it back up.
When did I start playing?
The bass?
I started playing the bass at the age of 7. My uncle, Lee Crockett Armstrong, worked for Cadillac, and he had this beautiful K bass. It was golden. And my dad tried to get me to play the violin, and I thought the violin was, excuse the expression, sissified. And I said, Daddy, I don't want to play the bass. I want to be like Uncle Lee, LC. And LC had a gold bass, which had that big sounding he was masculine and drove a Cadillac car. I said, shoot, I want to play the doggone bass. I love the deep sound. And I tried playing the violin as a kid, but I couldn't get a sound out of it. It was just squeaky, squeak, squeak, you know.
Right. And you've been playing that, that's been a long time or just a couple of years?
Well, I've been playing since I was 7, but I started playing professionally at the age of 13. That's when I joined the American Federation of Musicians. And at that time, I was playing around Detroit with groups like the Fantastic Four, Carl Carlton. Oh, man, I played with the Delphonics. God, all of the, Local 876, what was the Shy Lights? I played with the Shy Lights as a kid. And after that, I was around, the Motown cast. I ended up playing with the Miracles at the age of 14. And after that, I ended up meeting James Jamerson, and he gave me a lot of pointers on the bass, because James Jamerson was an excellent bass violinist. Right. And he just started telling me about the technique and the fretless bass. And after that, I wanted to know about the fretless electric bass, and I got one. And when I went to Connecticut to meet John McLaughlin, I auditioned for John McLaughlin. And he was so fascinated by the fretless bass that he gave me the job. And at the same time, it's a true story. There are a lot of people that are living, like Narada Walden and Greg Fell and Sandy Turano, who were there. And Jaco Pastorius came up, and he didn't get the gig because he didn't have a fretless bass. The only fretless bass at that time was like Fender Precision. And he ripped the frets out of his jazz bass, And that's how I got the gig. But if it wasn't for James Jamerson, I don't think me or Jaco, none of us would have had a fretless bass.
Hey, Rick Hicks, pop it.
There's a lot of cool stuff out there that, like, obviously my tastes have changed throughout the time, and like what grabbed me once is different now. But like, there's a band out there, Streetlight Manifesto. I think the bass player's name is Pete McCall. That's either it or it's the drummer. But that dude, all of his songs, he's got to be one of those guys that's playing with super low action. He's just playing all sorts of notes everywhere. It's crazy. And band Less Than Jake has this guy Roger playing bass for him, and he's just another guy, a bunch of notes, and that's what punk ska stuff is. All you do, just play a bunch of notes, play a lot of thirds. It's great. But I was also influenced by a lot of local cats. Mike Fredericks, for one, he was playing there for a couple of years.
I just mentioned him.
Mike Fredericks, I know Mike Fredericks, and he's a good friend, and he's one of the guys that I was watching playing bass. I'm like, oh yeah, he's pretty cool. James Simonson came and subbed for a couple weeks, and he was someone that grabbed me like, man, this guy's good. And I went out, caught a couple of gigs of his, and being Brian Rossi too, because he's over there and just
all Detroit bass players.
All Detroit bass players. Like Jaco was the first big player that I liked. Nowadays, like Nathan East is really tight. I'm not into like all the deep cuts. Like, man, I can list off his discography, but man, I love his playing. Watch a video of that dude. That dude's great.
Louis Johnson, and not that I played.
You made me spit my candy. Not that I play it, but I love it. Who else?
I think the guy's name is, I can't remember his name, was Alex Al or something like that.
Yeah, that is it.
From Detroit.
I know the Detroit bass player.
Yes?
Yeah.
Man, that cat is bad.
Ain't he bad?
Yeah, that cat is because it's mellow and whatever. Anyway. Yeah, he's really good. And who else?
Proud of him.
Man, I can't even think straight. Larry Graham and James Jamerson and Johnny B. Gaden.
Johnny B.
Yeah, Johnny B. from Albert Collins.
All right.
And James Cloyd.
Okay. Oh yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I got to put
James. Yeah.
Right. Well, I played blues for a while, so And anyway, I don't know. I can't think of anybody. Oh yeah, I mean,
you know what? I was already playing before Esperanza came out. But, you know, she, of course, was bad. And there's, you know, other female musicians. Mary Hayden. So, you know, and it's good because I haven't had a whole lot of female role models. I mean, not that male role models are bad,
But you're a lady, and sometimes you want to get inspired by ladies themselves, like Rhonda Smith and Tal Welkenfeld, Divinity.
Michelle Ndege Shaw.
Oh yeah, that's my girl. It's a whole bunch of them out there.
There's some very talented females.
Ever since my brother started playing bass, ever since he pulled up Victor Wooten, I fell in love.
Victor Wooten?
She's amazing. I can't describe it.
It's hard to put Victor in words.
Well, I always had love for other bass players. A deeper appreciation for the bass players. I always loved Jocko, Victor Bailey, Chris Squire. Lee Schuyler. Jack Bruce. I got Victor Wooten. Four. A lot of fours in the group. A lot of fours.
Well, I played a little guitar in stage band, but Earl Klugh was the guitar player. So that really didn't work out. But as bassists, a few bass players I knew growing up in high school. Reggie McBride was one of my favorites.
Oh, that's my buddy, man.
Yeah.
Me and him grew up together.
Okay, and you know Reggie. So Reggie really influenced.
Another Detroit bass player.
Very.
Living in
From Mumford.
L.A. or somewhere.
Yes. Well, Reggie went on to do Mark Griffin and all that other things. I really liked Yako. Berdine White, we talked about earlier. Of course, I'd be stupid not to say James Jamerson.
James Jamerson was
the guy. He would do stuff that was totally, if you listen to the old Motown things, it was like anti-approach of the bass. And his son, James Jamerson Jr., Kern Brantley, one of my favorite guys.
Well, I was about, 16, 17, there was a guy named Stanley something. You know what I'm talking about? Stanley Clark. And when I got into jazz, Ron Carter.
Another Detroit bass player.
That's right, yeah. And Paul Chambers is another Detroit bass player.
Actually, he sure is a Detroit bass player.
Yeah. And then a couple of years later, when Jocko got some notoriety, I was certainly influenced by him. And I lived in Florida for 6 years, so I got to know him. I got to hang out with him, and that was quite an experience, playing Jocko's bass in his living room and asking him, how do you finger Teen Town? Because I always did it like this. He said, no, man, this is how you do it. I said, that's how you do it. He said, that's how you do it.
Good.
And boy, who else? The usual suspects.
Right. Same with me. You just named my two favorite of all are, and I don't care how better they get and if they do flips or anything, but my all-time favorites will always be Jaco Pastorius and living Stanley Clark. I don't know why, but those are my favorites.
Oh, there was another guy I had kind of heard of, but had never really heard play. And it was about 2 weeks after I started studying with Max on the upright. And there used to be a little club in the Hyatt Regency in Dearborn called DB's. And there was Oscar Peterson with Joe Pass and Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen. And he scared me to death more than anybody ever. And I was so shocked and dismayed when he passed away in 2005. But he was my favorite all-time upright jazz bass player. He was just phenomenal. My jaw dropped. And that was a small club, and we were sitting pretty close. And he's just, he's not like intense or anything. He was so smooth and laid back, almost like he wasn't even trying. And the music that came, and he was doing things with, what's his thumb doing up here and this down here with the harmonics and everything. And that was just those three, Oscar and Joe and Niels. Boy, they're all gone now. But that was like the textbook way of playing that kind of jazz. Those guys were just incredible, and thank goodness we have all those recordings.
Well, my early influences were
when I first started playing, were all rock and roll guys.
Give me some
Felix Pappalardi from the group Mountain, Mel Shackner from Grand Funk Railroad. I can't think of this guy's name. I forget his name. It's not coming to me, but he played with Black Sabbath, the bass player with Black Sabbath, and the bassist with The Who. Those were my very early influences, and then I moved over, of course, to Jamerson and Ray Brown, you know, a great upright player, and Ron Carter. So those were
Ron Carter, another Detroit bass player.
bass player. Those were my very, very early influences, and then it moved on from there. You know, the Jocko, Rocco from Tower Power, Stanley, and Jamerson and Chuck Rainey. Then I started moving over into that stuff and getting into all of that. And then I moved over, and my greatest influence, which to this day he won't listen and believe me, was Lamont Johnson. That was my greatest influence playing bass.
My man T Money Green, my boy out there, and I love Lamont Johnson. A lot of people don't know, but Lamont was one of my big influences as a kid. I was in this program called Festival of the Performing Arts with Kim Weston, and Lamont was actually one of the instructors there. I don't even know if you remember, but he was a big influence on me and listening to Brainstorm and just growing up around Detroit, being around so many talented musicians, you know, like Bob Hurst and Mr. Ed Pickens. That was another one of my teachers back in the day. Oh my God, Teddy Harris and Bean Bowles, and Earl Van Dyke. So I was just blessed to be around so many talented musicians as a kid growing up in Detroit, and then also Uncle Nate Watts. That's another one of my mentors out of Detroit. So I want to be a mentor to some of these young cats that are coming up and that's trying to get to the next league and make a living out of playing music.